I'm in fact humbled by the and particularly because obviously all of you know a lot about design. And if you did not know a lot about design, you certainly learned a lot from the previous speakers. So what is the new idea that is worth spreading? I will try to persuade you that that design, or the tendency of nature to strike us with configurations and with rhythms, is in fact can be rationalized and can be predicted. It begins here on the slide with the reminder, really, that configurations are occurring everywhere in both realms: the older, which is the inanimate realm, and the newer one, which is the animate, or the biosphere. And the configuration is the same. In other words, the drawing unites. And it is this drawing that that forms the subject of my lecture. And because you already know everything about design, I thought I would try to bring you along in my little story by showing you 4 examples that all of you already know. Okay? The first idea is that design, or designedness, is a universal tendency in nature. Any tendency in nature, such as the gravitational fall of a rock, is actually begging for a principle. And of course, Galileo Galilei came up with that. For the design phenomenon, I proposed the constructal law, which states that for a finite size thing to persist in time, this thing needs to be free to morph, so that it changes in time in the direction of moving more and more easily. And the icon of this mental viewing is the evolution of the river basin. In time, the drawing is tree-shaped, but it contorts, it moves, it changes, so that tomorrow the river basin is different, but it flows more easily. And the principle is really not the drawing itself, because the birthing of the drawing never changes. It is the direction of the tape of this movie that all of us should be watching, but in fact we take for granted. So, the first, I will not lecture about how the water flows in the river basins. I will, in fact, invite you to think of all of you, including all the animals that you know about, as other finite-sized things of water that move on the landscape. So animals, including us, buckets of water with motors inside. Animal flight, or any other form of flying through space, is in fact a combination of 2 things, both bad things. The brick falls, it has to be lifted. That is costly. And then the brick advances horizontally. That is also costly, because the environment is resisting. The environment is actually asking to be impacted. So those who argue in favor of, let's say, avoiding environmental impact are actually unwittingly arguing in favor of no movement. Movement means impacting the environment. It turns out that these 2 penalties, when taken into account together, can be balanced in such a way that the movement is most easy in time. And this is why objects, from insects to birds and airplanes, possess characteristic speeds. The constructal law commands. And the speeds should be such that they are proportional to the body mass raised to the power 1/6, or to the body length scale raised to the power 1/2. The drawing at the bottom is a summary. The agreement between the theory, which is the straight line, and the constellation of all designs in the world is pretty obvious. The big idea is that the theory, meaning the principle, brings together everything. Everything with design appears to have been smart enough to obey the constructal law. not only the flyers, but all the other animals, including the runners and the swimmers. For the runners, it's fairly clear that the dog, in order to run, must get off the ground. That takes effort and advance horizontally. But what about the fish? Everybody knows that gravity doesn't matter to the fish. Well, everybody is wrong. The fish, okay, that took a lot of courage to declare when we published this work, and we've been paying the price ever since. But the fish, in order to advance horizontally, must get the water out of the way. The water can only go one way, because the bottom of the lake is rigid, the upper surface is not. So the fish is a weightlifter. In order to advance horizontally, the fish must lift water. All right? So that's basically the end of that particular story of discovery. The message is, as you see it on the slide, that if you know the constructal law, then without looking at nature, you know that larger animals, for that matter larger vehicles, should be traveling faster, should be moving their parts less frequently, should be stronger, meaning capable of exerting larger forces, and should be traveling farther, and one can show with the least expenditure of fuel or food per kilogram moved. Now, what about us? We don't think about it, but our own movement on the landscape is in fact quite clever. This happens naturally. We all move by combining, in fact, two kinds of movement. Fast, which means riding on a street or actually walking on a straight street, and basically wandering around, climbing out of bed, basically almost falling in the driveway. So walking versus riding. Metaphor, the simplest example I have is the Atlanta airport, where the walking happens along blue concourses, the riding happens along the train, which is shown as a black line. It turns out that if you think, meaning if you're altruistic in your thinking, if you think about everybody on the rectangular area and his or her need to get to one point, which is the terminal, the shortest time for everybody to go from area to point is such that the shape of the territory must be a particular shape, such that the time to walk is the same as the time to ride. The time to walk is to go long and fast. The other one, to walk, is to go short and slow. This is the secret, and it's worth keeping in mind next time you get out of bed. For example, let's say you have to travel on a bigger map, such as Europe. Let's say you fly from Paris to Madrid. This is a flight of, let's say, less than 2 hours. What do you do? That's the long and fast. Well, the drawing that you see is, in fact, very intelligent. In order to continue, you look for your car, and you need another hour or so to travel short and slow across the yellow. This is the rule, and all movement on Earth is in fact of this type. There's something else, which is actually there's a lot more, as you heard earlier today, but here's a discovery that came out of nowhere, because one of you 2 years ago asked me this question. It's about the origin of this very frequent occurrence called the golden ratio. The golden ratio is the fact that we seem to prefer images that have a rectangular shape, such that the horizontal dimension is about 50% larger than the vertical dimension. You can see that in your name card that's hanging from your neck. Or your credit card, the cinema screen, the computer screen, all of us are, in fact, we like this. And why is that? And the reason, according to the constructal law, is that these are the shapes that empower us to basically get going and not waste time. Because here's the Atlanta airport again. To perceive, to grasp an image, we must scan it with our two eyes, once horizontally and once vertically. You know the answer, the fastest scanning, meaning our eyes are traveling now on the airport. The fastest scanning is that where the time to go long and fast horizontally is the same as the time to go short and slow. You can show geometrically at the bottom of the screen that the ratio of the two speeds, fast versus slow, should be 3 divided by 2. From this comes the prediction on the back of an envelope that all these images, a la the credit card, should be shaped coincidentally in a way almost the same as the golden ratio. In other words, one predicts the golden ratio phenomenon. The golden ratio phenomenon is not the number which is the golden ratio, but the natural occurrence of shapes that resemble that number. But much more important is the fact that we actually migrate toward these shapes means that we are in fact in a hurry. Our own design is such that it enables us to get going, to move safely, to move straight with the vision and with the cognition. That is the big step, and it means that big words, vision and cognition, which especially cognition, belong in physics, hand in hand with locomotion itself, as features of the movement of animal mass on the landscape. And now I come to the again. This is the old joke of like the return to the scene of the crime. I was raised by basketball, by sports, and here I am all of a sudden making connections between what I just told you and where I come from. But this is not a joke. The serious connection is this: biologists struggle with the fact that we cannot witness evolution, because evolution in nature has taken forever. And on the other hand, an engineer would tell you that you can witness evolution all you want by looking at technology. An athlete will argue that you can witness evolution by looking at sports. Both of those ideas mean that if you want to talk about evolution in real time, live as during this transmission, you should be talking to me, okay? And here's what we know about sports in two examples. One is speed running, the 100-meter dash. Everybody knows that's in screen A, that in time records are better, meaning records are to be broken. The fastest are running faster. Screen B shows what very few people know. Sorry, only the people who know the constructal law should expect this, that in time, broadly speaking, athletes are actually bigger. If you combine the two screens, A and B, you arrive at C, and at the discovery that the sports, meaning the sport which is a sample of living, obviously, bodies, all pursuing the same goal, which is to move more easily on Earth, are in fact in complete agreement with the evolution of all animals. The speed versus mass relationship is the same relationship as for all the other terrestrial animals. So yes, not only for running but also for swimming, the same story. A are the record speeds. B the sizes of the athletes that win. C the conclusion that swimming, we show this not only for men but for women as well. During the 100 years of records being kept in modern athletics, the entire population of swimmers is in fact no different than the fish. All right? This is worth keeping in mind. Because, you know, the sports movement is supposed to be creating a purely egalitarian elite, according to Pierre de Coubertin. In the sports we have from the beginning, 100 years ago, weight categories for weightlifting, wrestling, and boxing, because athletes who are big are lift more, push more, and punch harder. Well, now you know that the larger athletes also run and swim faster. You draw your own conclusion where modern sports is going. You can predict the future. Weight categories in speed sports. You heard it here, okay? And now that we understand the evolution of sports, look at this is a summary of speeds in the running versus swimming over time. Running is roughly 10 meters per second, swimming about 2 meters per second. One is 5 times faster than the other, just like the ratio of speeds in running versus swimming in animals. The dog and the fish of the same weight have this difference in speeds. And then there's this other pattern that's pretty obvious on the screen. It isn't just that the winner in the sprint is of African origin and the winning swimmer of European origin. All the finalists these days are of one origin and not of the other. Why is this? And the answer is the same answer as before, as from the constructal law. We know that the bigger means faster. It turns out that the architecture of the human body depends on origin. You heard earlier that happiness has a geography or a map. Well, look at this. The human body has a geography. These are measurements of military men from 17 armies. There are two measurements. On the horizontal is the total height of the individual. On the vertical is the sitting height on the individual, which is a rough measure of the torso. And so, yes, taller means faster. That means we look at the right side of the screen, where we do not see athletes of Oriental origin, as observed in the sports, of course. But now there is a difference between athletes of European versus African origin. The Europeans have longer torsos. The African has longer legs. And that explains in one sentence the segregation of the populations of athletes into these two sports. In running, the height that matters is the position of the center of mass above the ground. So if you compare two athletes equally tall, the one with a higher center of gravity is actually faster. That gives you we can show a 1.5% advantage of speed in running, which turns out to be a disadvantage in swimming for the first group, but an advantage in swimming for the second group, because the height that matters in swimming is the height to which the shoulders rise above the water to create a taller and bigger wave. Bigger waves move apparently horizontally faster. Swimming is the art of surfing on the wave generated by the swimmer. And so we answer the riddle about the current state of the speed sports, but we also make a contribution unheard of actually in biology, which is to explain why swimmers should look different than terrestrial animals. Yes, from the constructal law, without having seen an animal, we know to expect that legs are for land and torsos, meaning no legs, are for water. That is the way things should be. And I conclude with an even bigger claim. This is both a summary of what I showed you, but also the claim that the constructal law also covers all the phenomena and all the mental viewings that my colleagues have brought in front of you and will be bringing in front of you today. The constructal law is not only the law of design and nature, but also the law that underpins the truth behind this slogan of TED itself, which is that it is in defense or in favor of spreading ideas that are worth spreading. To spread ideas means to to tell all of us things that are useful with regard to making us better and better at moving ourselves and our goods and ideas on the landscape. Thank you.